I find it incredibly ironic that on the day the Automatron DLC came out, the focus of my attention is not on that, but rather on leaks for the Far Harbor DLC. I mean, don't get me wrong, Automatron is still pretty cool, but when you guys see these leaks, you're gonna lose your shit. Remember all those underwater DLC theories centered around the harpoon gun from way back when? Well, turns out that they're probably accurate, since recently a person from Reddit uncovered hidden files related to the Far Harbor DLC. And what's in these files hints that there's going to be underwater exploration in Far Harbor. Before I even start talking about the files though, I need to briefly describe the underwater DLC theories that are so rampant in the Fallout 4 community right now, as well as the enigmatic harpoon gun, just to give you guys a little bit of context here. Now, a few months back, a modder uncovered a strange hidden weapon that has been dubbed the harpoon gun. And as its name would indicate, it shoots harpoons and moreover appears to be intended solely for underwater use. One major piece of evidence backing this claim up is that even when used above ground, bubbles appear around the projectile, which is rather strange if the weapon is intended for above ground use at all. Whatever the reason, this weapon doesn't seem to function normally on dry land. Moreover, the harpoon gun was not available by normal means in the game and could only be obtained by hacking or modding. This led many people, including myself, to the conclusion that it was intended for use in a future DLC. Thus, we've got a weapon that seems to be designed for underwater use in a future DLC, which is what led to many people crafting theories that there would be a future Fallout 4 DLC centered around underwater exploration. With that in mind, let's discuss these files. The following code snippet was uncovered in a folder specifically dedicated to the Far Harbor DLC. Looking at the code, you can see a ton of references to the harpoon gun, which would seem to confirm that the harpoon gun is indeed going to be a part of the Far Harbor DLC. But what catches my attention even more is the line, TestUnderWaterWorldScript. The use of the words underwater world seem to indicate that we're going to be exploring, of course, some sort of underwater world in the Far Harbor DLC. If you don't believe me, then take a look at this. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the texture map for a squid. This was also found in the folder specifically dedicated to Far Harbor. Now consider the following fact. Squids can only live at a depth between 300 meters and 1000 meters under the sea, which is nowhere near the surface. And obviously we're going to be seeing squids in Far Harbor, since why make a texture map for a non-existent enemy? So the only plausible conclusion is that we're going to be venturing deep underwater in the Far Harbor DLC, and it's here that we'll see the squids. No other explanation really makes sense. The specifics of underwater exploration could be done in many different ways, such as via submarine, or underwater power armor, or something else. I have no idea what the exact means are gonna be, but one thing I'm almost sure of beyond a doubt at this point is that there will be underwater exploration of some sort in this DLC. Extending the idea further, some have even gone so far as to theorize that there's gonna be a Rapture-style underwater city featured in Far Harbor. Now, I personally don't think this is gonna happen, since I feel like it would be a huge pain for Bethesda to code, but what I do think is possible is that there's going to be some sort of small underwater base. Another real shot in the dark theory I've heard is that remnants of the Enclave are secretly hiding underwater in Far Harbor, in which case the underwater base I just mentioned would be for the Enclave. Now, unfortunately, this does sort of contradict Fallout lore, since the Enclave were destroyed in Fallout 3, but Bethesda has been known to contradict lore in the past. So, while I don't think this is gonna happen either, I suppose it's still remotely possible. Moving on, let's talk underwater power armor. For starters, I want to draw your attention to another line in the code that reads pPowerArmorUnderwaterLightSpell. Could this line possibly be hinting at underwater power armor in Far Harbor? If you ask me, I think there's actually a pretty good chance. Power armor that is specifically designed for use underwater is an idea that has been floating around the community for some time, and Bethesda tends to listen to fans, so it's not out of the question that they do that here. My specific theory with regards to this is that you're going to be able to somehow modify your power armor for underwater use in the Far Harbor DLC. The reason I say this is that the words light spell indicate that somehow some sort of modification could make your power armor lighter and thus perhaps able to float instead of straight sinking to the ocean floor, which would allow us to actually explore underwater areas using power armor. Or at least that's the dream. The underwater city and the power armor stuff, I admit, are a pretty big stretch at this point, but I still think perhaps there's some modicum of truth in each of those theories. One final rather minor thing before ending off the video here is that the files also revealed a new enemy in the files for Far Harbor. As it turns out, the enemy is actually a Ghoul Yao Guai. I'll go ahead and flash some screenshots of it up on the screen right now. Personally, I'm really not too surprised by something like this, since Bethesda said in their official description of this DLC that radiation levels would be off the charts. Also, what's more important than the Ghoul Yao Guai itself is the prospect of more ghoulified enemies. I can't help but wonder if we'll see ghoul versions of underwater enemies or ghoul versions of other creatures that we haven't seen before. Despite my qualms with the game, one thing Bethesda has done well in Fallout 4 is the enemies. So not only do I think tons of new enemies will be introduced in this DLC, but I'm also pretty faithful that they'll be worth our time. Well, alright folks, that is pretty much gonna do it for this video. As always, if you enjoyed or if you found this video informative, be sure to drop me a like down below and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already for more Fallout 4 content in the future. Also, be sure to let me know your thoughts on these leaks down below. Do you agree with a lot of what I've said, or do you think I'm just over theorizing? Otherwise, I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video.